Do the seas have a history? What would an ethnography of the seas look like? In November 2018, a group of academics, activists, and artists came together to discuss these questions. If we think about the modern history of empires, nations, and states, so much of these claims to sovereignty and political contestations were organized around territoriality. But who owns the seas? For whom is the sea home?
The sea is not a home for humans, although we have thought about dreaming to live there, but it is a home for a lot of sea creatures, a lot of life on Earth. And following the reminder from Aldo Leopold and more recently Carl Safina, who advocated for sea ethic, we need to respect and the need to include non-human actors in our histories. When you think about the possibility of the sea being a destination, as an environmental historian, I realized that the kind of binary that goes with that is that for some living things on Earth, many living things on Earth, the sea is a home. So it isn't yet a place where humans can live, although we have imagined that we might do that with undersea habitats and things like that.
In 1962, will now spend 30 days at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean.
The sea has been fascinating, I think, to social scientists for a long time because it, in a lot of ways, is imagined to be this antithesis of land in terms of ownership, property, boundaries. I think the lived reality by fishermen, by coastal people, by governments too, is that it is much more bounded than we know. There's all kinds of limitations on access, territorialities that are both informal and formal.
The sea is a social problem, it's a technical problem, it's a natural problem, it's a scientific problem. In a very basic way, nothing's more political than the resolution of social conflict. Social conflict is almost always going to haunt our efforts to be together. And conflict over the sea and the use of its resources has been historically a pervasive feature of human beings trying to use the sea, use the ocean.
The sea is a place that really foregrounds how knowledge is political. We can easily point to different knowledges, the knowledge of research-based science versus the knowledge of fishermen or people who actually live on the sea. And those are not always in sync, and they create tensions, struggles, politics around how many fish are left, and so on and so forth.
In many ways, we could also retell the history of capitalism itself from the vantage of the seas.
Sea features in my work as a political imaginary mostly in sort of thinking against capitalism, in that I see the sea as really allowing us to see all of the sort of secret ways that politics is deeply structuring the fiction of free markets and the promise of capitalism.
While the seas were critical for the development of modern empires and states, or even modern capitalism itself, what about now? How might we reconsider our relationship to the seas today? With the threat of ever-looming regimes of regulation and the threat of large-scale climate catastrophes, these questions are urgent.
I don't presume a commons. What I do instead is try to think of ways that my research might solicit a commons. To what degree do action research projects with people who live on the water get them to think about and live that commons, right? Rather than the alternative, which is to live it as a site of individual profit.
The commons, as it is imagined, let's say, after Industrial Revolution is not the commons before the Industrial Revolution. People are not individual and are then free to navigate the commons, but pretty much related.
I think is actually like super exciting is that there's no canon, right? When we think about like the oceans. So there's no established sort of body of knowledge, and there's also no disciplinary canon or disciplinary sort of like division yet. So what we're actually able to do is bring together like interdisciplinary people and actually somewhat create a common language about the ocean and create a sort of canon